Build a mind so strong it scares people. You know that feeling when you're sitting in a room full of people and someone says something that everyone else seems to agree with, and you just do not? You do not argue, you do not perform disagreement, you simply sit with the quiet awareness that what they are saying does not hold up, and you feel no particular urgency to convince anyone of that. And later, someone pulls you aside and says, "You were so quiet in there. Are you okay? You seem detached." You were not detached. You were thinking. But somewhere along the way, the world decided that a person who does not react loudly does not care deeply, that silence is emptiness, that stillness is absence. And so people who carry a certain kind of mental density, a mind that moves slowly on purpose, that does not rush toward conclusions, that has learned to hold contradiction without collapsing, these people get misread constantly. They get called cold, reserved, intimidating, sometimes even arrogant, simply because they are not performing their thoughts for an audience. What if that is not a flaw? What if that is actually one of the rarest forms of psychological strength a person can develop? Let us start with what this is not. This is not about being smarter than other people. It is not about superiority or about sitting in distant judgment of the world. Those things come from insecurity wearing the costume of confidence. What we are actually talking about is something quieter and far more difficult to build. A mind that has been trained, mostly through lived experience and deliberate reflection, to remain stable under pressure. A mind that does not need external validation to know what it believes. A mind that can sit inside uncertainty without panicking and reach for the exit. That kind of mind is rare, and when people encounter it, they often don't know what to do with it, so they call it intimidating. What they mean is they cannot read you, and what that actually means is you have stopped being predictable. There's a concept in psychology called emotional differentiation. The psychologist Lisa Feldman Barrett has spent years researching how people experience and interpret their own emotions, and what she has found is striking. Most people, when they feel something uncomfortable, reach for one of a few broad labels: anxious, upset, stressed, and those labels essentially become the experience. The emotion swallows the person. But individuals with high emotional differentiation can do something different. They can identify the specific texture of what they are feeling, not just anxious, but "I am uncertain about this outcome, and I am interpreting that uncertainty as a threat, even though it might not be one." That granularity, that ability to zoom in to your own inner life with precision, fundamentally changes how you respond to the world. You do not react to the feeling. You respond to the information the feeling is carrying. This is not a personality trait you are born with. It's a skill, and it's one of the foundational bricks in what we might loosely call a strong mind. Think about what strength actually means in a physical context. We tend to imagine raw force, but any serious athlete, any surgeon, any craftsman will tell you that the highest form of physical strength is control, the ability to apply exactly the right amount of force in exactly the right direction at exactly the right moment. Reckless power is easy, precision is hard. The same is true of mental strength. The person who erupts at every provocation is not strong. They are at the mercy of every stimulus around them. The person who can be challenged, criticized, destabilized, and still come back to center, that is a different thing entirely. The ancient Stoics called it apatheia, which gets mistranslated as apathy, but actually means something far more intentional: the capacity to not be ruled by your reactions. Marcus Aurelius was emperor of Rome. He had more power than almost any human being in history. and he spent his private journals reminding himself to slow down, to question his instincts, to hold himself accountable. That was not weakness performing humility. That was a man who understood that his greatest threat was his own unchecked mind. Here's where it gets interesting, and where I want to invite you to pause for a moment. Because there's a version of this that is healthy, and there's a version that is avoidance dressed up as calm, and it's worth sitting with that distinction honestly. Genuine mental strength includes the willingness to be wrong. It includes the capacity to feel pain without immediately escaping it. A person who appears unaffected by everything, who never seems moved, never admits uncertainty, never lets anything land, that is not a strong mind. That is a defended one. There's a difference. The strong mind allows things in. It just doesn't let them take up permanent residence without examination. Vulnerability and strength are not opposites. The philosopher Simone Weil wrote that attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity. To genuinely pay attention to the world, to other people, to your own interior, requires a kind of courage that does not announce itself. It is not dramatic. It is just deeply present. So ask yourself gently, when you are quiet, when you withdraw into yourself, when you choose not to engage, is it because you have processed something and found peace with it? Or is it because engaging would require feeling something you're not ready to feel? Neither answer is shameful, but the first one builds you. The second one keeps you in place. People with genuinely strong minds share a few qualities that tend to make others uncomfortable, not because of arrogance, but because of contrast. They don't change their position simply because someone raises their voice. They have learned that intensity of emotion in another person is not evidence of truth. This is not stubbornness, it's epistemic discipline. They have learned, usually through painful experience, that the loudest opinion in the room is not always the wisest one. They are comfortable with silence in a culture that treats silence as awkward, as something to fill. They don't need conversation to be performing at all times. This tends to unsettle people who use constant chatter as a way to manage their own anxiety. And they have a clear internal compass that does not depend on the approval of whoever is standing in front of them. This is perhaps the most unsettling quality of all, not because it's threatening, but because it subtly reflects back to others how much of their own behavior is governed by the need to be approved of. A person who doesn't seem to need your approval can feel, paradoxically, like a criticism, even when they are not saying a single critical thing. The writer Flannery O'Connor once said something that has always struck me as quietly profound. The truth does not change according to our ability to stomach it. There's something in that sentence that captures what a strong mind is really about. It is not the ability to dominate a conversation or win every argument. It's the willingness to keep moving toward what is real, even when what is real is uncomfortable, even when you're the only one in the room willing to look at it. That is not a performance. That is a practice, and it's one that never fully ends. Here's the thing I want to leave you with. Building a mind that strong is not about becoming unreachable or unknowable. It is not about becoming someone who cannot be moved. It is about becoming someone who chooses what moves them, who processes before reacting, who knows themselves clearly enough to act from that knowledge rather than from fear or habit or the invisible social pressure to be whatever the room needs them to be. That kind of person doesn't scare others intentionally, but they can be unsettling to be around, because they remind people, quietly, without saying a word, that a different way of existing is possible. And once you see that, you quite can't unsee it. If something in this video resonated with you, not because it was validating, but because it made you uncomfortable in a useful way, then the next conversation worth having is about where that discomfort actually comes from. The next video on this channel explores exactly that, what your reactions reveal about the beliefs you didn't know you had. It's a quieter kind of self-knowledge, but it tends to be the kind that actually changes something. Take your time with it. There's no rush.